All right, my friends, welcome back to the Build Show podcast. That's right, my weekly time to get together with you guys and go deep. We've got a great topic today. We're going to be talking about what makes a great project manager. What are the qualities? What are the things we're looking for when we hire a project manager? And if you're a builder listening to this, a one-man show, a bigger company, I think this is going to be helpful for you too to really spend the time thinking about what are the qualities that it takes to be a really good builder. I'm saying project manager. That's the term that Tim and I use in our business, Reisinger Build, for the folks that are in the field that are really the builders, right? We call them project managers. But I think these are qualities that everyone needs. I'm joined by my business partner, Tim Hill. Tim is the managing partner of Reisinger Build. I'm the founding partner of Reisinger Build, our home building company here in Austin, Texas. And if you're watching this on thebuildshow.com, we're in our brand new studio. Tim and the team built us this fabulous studio. This is the Reisinger Build studio. Fabulous acoustics, by the way, Tim. Good. I really like it. With that being said, what it takes to make a great project manager from the Reisinger Build studios in Austin, Texas. Let's get going. All right, guys, before I jump in with Tim on today's topic, I want to say a big thanks to our friends at ViewRail for sponsoring the podcast. If you don't know this company, this is a company I've talked a lot about over the years. I have a very personal connection with this company because Len, the founder, and his wife, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name at the moment, I consider them friends. You know, I've been out to their location several times. I really feel like Len is a super high quality, super high integrity person who's built a giant business over the last, I want to say ViewRail's maybe 20 years or so in business, and still family owned. Now his son is the second generation. I believe he's coming on as the president this year. He's got another son that's in the welding department. This is truly a family owned, family run company right in the heart of America. They're based in Goshen, Indiana, where they make all these amazing products. So if you don't know them, go check out their website. Viewrail.com, I believe, is the website. They're probably best known for their flight system, a very modern staircase, a lot of metal components, but also blended with wood. And they have a glass facility as well, where they basically pre-make everything in the factory and then ship you all these components, kind of like an erector set. In the past, when we've done modern stairs, we've had to hire 2 or 3 local trades, welding fabricator, a carpenter, maybe a third glass company to come and put glass on later. They've consolidated all that into one place where they can show you the design. You guys can collaborate on it, make sure that everything works. They'll come out to your job site and even measure and make sure things are going to work. They also have an install team. This is really a neat company doing really cool products. But the best part about it is when that comes in and gets assembled on your job site, you as the builder get to take the credit for this amazing craftsmanship. And I've always said over the years that stairs really show the craftsmanship of the builder. We can have cool cabinetry from Europe. That's one thing. But there's something about a set of really well designed, really well built, great craftsmanship stairs that says, man, this is a cool and very well built house. So thanks to ViewRail for sponsoring. Tim, I know you came prepared with a document that we put together a while back. Walk us through what you think. What are the kind of qualities that it takes to make a great project manager?
Well, we have 8 project managers on staff now. I mean, I guess 12, 15 years ago, we had 2 or 3.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
And so we've
including
grown,
you and me.
Right, that's right. We've grown a lot, and I think as we've grown, we've improved the quality of our staff.
Yep.
And it's important that we have a good understanding, and our staff has a good understanding of what makes a good project manager and what standards we hold them accountable for. Mm-hmm. So I think when we interview for project managers, we have fairly well understood criterion for looking for the right people and measuring those skill sets. We actually put all of our applicants through PSP testing to see where they stand in their personality and their problem-solving capability.
Yep.
And we review people on a regular basis to get feedback from them and give them feedback and how they're doing in their growth and becoming better and better project managers.
For sure.
So I think we have a fairly good system for not only analyzing who we should hire, but making the project managers that we have on staff better at what they do.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And what are those qualities we're looking for? What are the things that it takes to make a really good project manager?
Well, there are a lot of different aspects, but I like to distill them down into 5 different major categories to look for. Certainly, we want people that are good leaders because they have to lead the people that work with them and work for them to get the best work product out of each of those people.
Yep.
Right. So good leadership capability, gaining and earning the respect of the people that they work with allows them to lead those people. No one wants to follow someone they don't respect.
Yeah.
So you have to be fair. You have to be transparent. You have to be knowledgeable in what you do. And if project managers work on that and they're diligent about understanding what they're doing and who they're doing it for, they are generally followed as good leaders.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so leadership, number 1.
All right. Collaboration, the willingness to work as a team.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because, and a point I made in a previous podcast about all of the different team members that we work with. As a project manager, we work upstream, downstream, and sideways, right? So we work upstream with our clients. We work sideways with our on-staff other project managers and back office personnel in the office.
Yep.
Also, we work with the design professionals that work with us and the clients to design the project and give us understanding of design details.
Yep.
And then, of course, we work downstream with our vendors, our subcontractors, and our suppliers.
Yeah, that's right.
And you have to be able to communicate through all those and manage all those people with great collaboration.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Okay, so we've got both a good leader and someone who's a good collaborator. Basically, they're good at they're team oriented rather than being a lone gun, a one-man show,
Right.
somebody who is not able to work with others. What's the third thing?
Well, what feeds both of those other things, and probably the most effective part of a project manager, is good communication skills.
That's
right?
for sure.
So communicating, being able to express what you expect of other people and what you need them to do,
Yep.
and being able to listen and understand what your clients need from you and what your trade base needs from you, what information they need. That communication is very important to the success of any project.
Yeah.
And it has to be, as I've always said, early and often.
Yeah.
You have
that's
to,
right.
as soon as you know information, as soon as you have news, good or bad, communicate that news.
Yep.
Right? And do it often. Set a regular routine. Project managers should weekly meet with their trade base and weekly meet with their clients and their design professionals.
Yeah.
To make sure that everybody's communicating everything they know in real time.
And we have an expectation with our project managers that they communicate on a weekly basis in a written format.
That's right.
To our clients as well. Would you speak to that just briefly?
Well, we have a weekly meeting, weekly project meeting with all of the design professionals and the client to make sure that we're all on board with next steps. We ask the clients if they have any concerns. We explain to them what's going on the project, look for information from the design professionals in that meeting. We generally go into the meeting with a published agenda so everyone knows what to expect or what to bring with them, what their homework is, if you will. Then when we leave with everyone understanding what they need to do between now and the next meeting, which will happen the following week. That's important.
Super important.
We also follow up at the week's end or the beginning of the following week with a report. And the report has photographs. It says, here's what happened last week. Here's what's going to happen next week. And here are the challenges we have. And here's the way we plan to overcome them. Here's the information that we need from the design professionals.
Yeah.
So it's a follow-up to the weekly meeting with the progress report. And that is, those two things combined make for a great communication model for any project.
Boy, that's for sure. And we can all think of people in our lives who are bad communicators, and boy, they're hard people to work with, and or let's say work for.
That's right. That's right.
So that good communication is so key. As a side note, I get a little story for you. You probably heard this, Tim, or my audience maybe has, but it was so formative in my life. When I was a 22-year-old assistant superintendent, I was working in Virginia for a big national builder, and we had this office manager, Pat, that I really liked, but she was a pretty rigid person, and I learned a lot from her. And one time, I had a meeting with her prior to my weekly construction meeting. I can't remember the exact specifics, but let's say I was supposed to be there at 3 o'clock, and I was running late. I got there at like 3:10, and I rushed into her office. Pat, I'm so sorry I'm late. And she was like, "Are you kidding me? You're 10 minutes late for our meeting, Matt. Why didn't you call me ahead of time and tell me? You went from someone who could have called me from the job site. This is actually before cell phones. You could have called me at 2 o'clock and said, 'I'm so sorry. My inspector showed up unexpectedly. I'm going to be a few minutes late for our meeting.' And I would have labeled you as a good communicator. But instead, I'm labeling you as unreliable by showing up at my office 10 minutes late for our meeting." And it really struck me like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like I go from being a good communicator, saying, here's what's going to happen, especially if it's not going to meet your expectation, to all of a sudden being, oh, it's no big deal. I'm only 10 minutes late. No, I'm unreliable. And that was a wake up call for me. And I tend to be a person that I jokingly call myself an aggressive scheduler. But what that really means is I tend to be late all the time or whatever, for whatever reason. And that's not a good quality about me. That's not something I'm proud of. And my wife, it drives her crazy. She's a very on time, a very punctual person. And she tells me, by you being late, it tells people that you don't value their time. And I think this really, rolling back to what we're talking about, this rolls back to communication.
It does.
By being a good communicator and setting good expectations with customers, you set them up for success. By being a late or a non-communicator, you're communicating that you're an unreliable builder.
The whole concept of communication is to overcome deficiencies. And here's a concept that everyone needs to understand, and this is not only true in our industry, but it's any industry. Nobody's perfect, right? And you need to tell clients up front that we're going to do our best, and we are the best at what we do, but mistakes will happen. Oversights will happen. Mm-hmm. And mainly because we don't have all the information when we start this project, but we will react to the information as it comes to us.
Yep.
That model generally yields some misunderstanding or some deficiencies that have to be overcome with good management.
Yep.
And that's what we do, good management.
That's right.
But what that means is that communication allows you to say, okay, now we know something we didn't know last week, and here's the way we're going to overcome it. Mm-hmm. Or say, we just discovered something that's going to affect our budget. And between now and next week, we're going to try to make these corrections to minimize the impact to this project.
Yep.
That kind of communication doesn't make clients upset. It makes them respect you more.
Yeah.
And by giving them that information, bad news first, but communicate early and often,
Yep.
Makes all the difference in the world with the respect that you earn from your clients and all the people that you work with.
That's right. All right. So leadership, team orientation. No, you called it something else.
Collaboration.
Sorry. Collaboration.
Same thing.
And then communication. What's
Right.
number 4?
Work ethic. This is what a lot of people call energy, right? And
Yeah.
it comes out in 2 different forms. You and I have had this conversation before.
Yeah.
You and I are very different people.
We are.
Right? You're very energetic, very dynamic. I'm very low-key, low dynamic. But I have a long span work ethic. I start very early and I stop very late. But I'm a very steady paced worker. Mm-hmm. You're a very fast paced worker.
I'm a jackrabbit.
Yeah, very energetic.
Right.
Both things get it done. But it's the work ethic. It's the willing to put in the time and the effort to get it done.
Yep.
Oftentimes we find people who are very enthusiastic about the industry and the building science and the cool factor of home building and remodeling, but they just don't understand that it also takes hard work. You can't just do the cool project. You can't just interact with the great fun people.
Yeah.
There are a lot of dynamics that happen that you have to overcome that just take diligence and hard work to get there.
Yeah.
And the end result of that is, as we've talked about before, very rewarding, right? It's probably the most rewarding career that I know of. But it does take hard work to be successful.
Yeah, and there's a lot of flexibility in a project manager's time, but at the same token, there absolutely needs to be that work ethic there to say, look, I'm going to put my 40 in, right? I'm going to really get my work done, and sometimes that's going to be after hours, sometimes that's going to be on the weekends, but I'm really going to make sure that things happen, and we need people we need our project managers to have that idea of there's stuff that needs to happen this week, and I got to figure out how to get it done, no matter what happens with my personal life.
That's right. And I think the best way to look at it is not so much as a 40-hour work week. It's not 8 to 5. It's really whatever my project and my client demands.
Mm-hmm.
And our work, home building and remodeling, is very fluid in that it can happen in the evening. It can happen on the weekend. You never know when your trades are going to stop
That's
or
right.
start work. You
That's
never
right.
if they're going to show up on Saturday to try to get caught up.
Mm-hmm.
You never know if a plumbing line is going to break on the weekend.
Yeah.
And if a project manager has the understanding, I'm going to do what it takes to manage this job, then they have the flexibility to say, hey, I've got everything running on autopilot this afternoon. I've got the drywallers there hanging drywall. They don't need my help. They don't need any information. I've got a dentist appointment I got to go to. I got a doctor's appointment. I got to take my kids to school,
Sure.
pick them up from school this afternoon. You got the freedom to do that.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
great thing about it's not a clock in and clock out job, but it is a job that demands a work ethic that says, I'm going to do whatever it takes for my project to be successful.
Let me get your advice on something on this point, Tim, that I think I bet a bunch of our listeners are struggling with. What do you do with the client that always wants to meet on a Saturday or a Sunday, or they're texting you in the middle of dinner or in the middle of watching Netflix at 9 p.m. and you've answered before, they're expecting you to answer? Like, talk to us about that situation. What's your take on all that?
Well, I think early in the project, you have to set expectations, and that goes to communication.
That's right.
Right? You have to say, look, I understand if there's an emergency, if there's some out of the ordinary circumstance that demands my attention, feel free to text me. Let
Sure.
me know what's going on that
Yep.
needs my attention.
Yep.
But as a routine, we generally don't work on the weekend or into the evening because those are family times,
Yep.
and we respect that. It's not to say that we won't take care of your project if the project demands, but as a general rule, our work day is whenever the trades are working.
Right. That's right. And have you gone as far as telling clients, I actually don't know the answer to this, if you're going to type an email at 6:30 p.m., hit the send in the morning button on that email.
That's a good idea.
Or are you doing that or telling the project managers to do that? Like, I've gotten email. You're a very early riser. I don't get up and look at email at 5 a.m., but you often do. Our mutual friend Jake Bruton starts his workday at like 4:30, but he's whipped at 4:30, 12 hours later, 4:30 p.m. that is, and he shuts it down and doesn't. He's purposely trying to get family time from 4:30 p.m. onward. I've done this a few times, but not as regular. Like, I don't want to send an email to somebody at some weirdo like 9:15. I tend to be more of a night owl. 9:15 p.m. time. I'll set my phone. If you long tap on your phone when you hit the send button, it comes up a menu that says send later, and you can schedule it. I'll send it at 7 a.m. the next morning, so I look like I'm some Tim Hill early riser rather than some weirdo who was still up at 9:30 checking email. I wonder if that's something we could coach our clients on even.
Maybe so. I think that, in this world of immediate gratification, we all want to do things right now and get response right now.
Yep.
And I think that there is some legitimacy to that because we can't stop the world in the way it behaves. We have to adapt to it to some extent. But yeah, if there are tricks that we can use that are at our disposal to work within normal business hours, even though we may not be, we don't want to set a bad precedent, for example.
Yep.
I kind of like to work early to late because it allows me to pace myself and it's like a marathon kind of thing. You pace yourself, you can go a longer distance at a more steady pace. And
Right.
it works for me. Doesn't work for other people.
Yeah.
Right. So just whatever fits your work ethic, your work model, as long as you're getting your job done and managing your project well.
Oh, okay. So work ethic was number 4. What's number 5?
People management. This speaks to all the above.
That's a
right?
good one.
Yeah, people management. And to give you an example, we have another colleague that you and I know. She has a remodeling company, a relatively small company. And she's worked for several other builders along her career. Now she's on her own. And she grew to a point where she needed a project manager. Well, she had been going to the same car dealer to get her car serviced for many, many years and had a relationship with this young woman who was a service writer at a car dealership. And she went in one time to get her car serviced, and she wasn't there. And another service writer explained that they had some budget cuts and had to let her go because they just had to cut back their staff.
Hmm.
And it was strange. She said, that's strange. And she said, I love this lady, this young woman. She has incredible communication skills. Everyone loves her. And she said, I'm going to seek her out. So she found her, interviewed her as a project manager, and turns out that she knew very little about home building and remodeling, but she was a great people management person.
Oh my gosh, that's
she
crazy,
was willing
Tim.
to listen to people complain about their cars and their service times and all that, and manage those people and get them calmed down and get them satisfied so that they were happy customers. She said, if she can do that, I think she can work really well with remodeling clients.
Heck yeah.
And this is a year later, and she's turned out really well. She's learned a lot about construction.
That's fabulous.
She's gone to a lot of training schools about different types of construction. So her skill set in technical understanding has risen very quickly.
Yeah.
But the underlying ability to manage people, all of those trade contractors, all of the clients, all the interior designers, architects, she's done really well at.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of that ability to influence people, right? To
Right.
get them to get on board with you or to do something that maybe they don't want to do.
Yep.
That's true with our clients. That's true with our subcontractors. That's true with our inspectors on the job site,
Right.
with our laborers, whatever. We need to be able to persuade people, to have that persuasive people understanding to say, all right, how am I going to get this outcome that I'm looking for out of this person?
That's right. I think that speaks a little bit to social intelligence, the ability to adapt your communication to different types of people with different backgrounds.
Yep.
And if you understand that certain people who come from a perspective of a trade contractor versus a client who may want to communicate at a different level or have different understanding of what they're to expect. If you have the ability to shift your communication to both different levels, then you'll do fine.
Yeah. How about where does critical and logical thinking fit in all this?
I would say that it speaks to all of those. Critical and logical thinking is basically the ability to solve problems, right? Problem solving is the fundamental aspect of all home building and remodeling because we have to figure out how to do something that's conceived into something that's reality.
Right.
Right. And there's always challenges in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like following the directions of an erector set.
Right.
Right. There's always nuance because most of what we do is prototypical. Right. It's never been done before.
Yeah.
There are certain aspects that have been done before, and you have to figure out how to fit those different components together. But most of what we do is very unique.
Yeah.
And remodeling work especially. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I'd say critical and logical thinking is an overlying ability of any of the project managers to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Some better than others. It's hard to learn that skill. It's almost a fundamental thing that people just either have or don't.
I don't know who I was listening to on this topic recently, but they said that, and I can't remember if this was Joe Rogan or somebody like that. I don't regularly listen to his podcast, so maybe it was some Instagram clip, but they said that, oh, you know who it was? It was Benji from Breakthrough Academy said, I feel like critical and logical thinking as a nation has gone down, that we've kind of dumbed ourselves down to we only watch 1 minute videos and we want to keep swiping, and we're using AI. We're using ChatGPT instead of trying to figure out the answer ourselves. So we're kind of abdicating critical and logical thinking. I don't know that that's entirely true, but it does make me, especially as I get older, think, what am I going to do to continue to be sharp? One of the things that I've realized recently is I'm not reading as much as I would like to read, and my eyesight's not as good. So I'm reading more books on tape where I can listen to them and take a walk.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I'm keeping my critical and logical thinking skills sharp, because that's such a differentiator for me individually, for you individually. I know both of us have been tested very high on that. As a side note, by the way, the resource that Tim and I have used for quite a long time is a company out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called PSP. And I can't remember what that stands for, but if you just Googled PSP HR, they would come up. It's a company that does pre-employment testing. They also do human development, basically. And so we do a hour-long pre-employment test that does part personality test, part critical logical thinking test, and allows us to take these 5 qualities that Tim and I talked about here and actually have those in a format that gives us a range of where people fit on these things, kind of average, below average, above average. They've been a fabulous resource for us. I've actually used them for 25 years now, since even before I was my own custom builder. So highly recommend them. What else do we want to mention on this topic of like what makes a great project manager?
Well, I think that sums up most of the general aspects. I mean, I'm sure you could break each of those down into subcategories: professionalism, consistency, risk awareness, accountability, responsiveness, all those things that go up to make all the others.
Yep.
I want to tell you an interesting story I had recently with one of our colleagues. 2 different engineers from 2 different schools in Texas that we both know that are typically competing, at least intellectually, with each other. And the engineer from one school said, you know, the difference between us and you is we can solve problems intuitively. And the other school engineer said, well, we solve problems because we can actually do the math.
Forget about intuitively. We need to do the math.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's
good.
Both aspects, you know, will get you there. And it depends on what your skill set is.
That's funny. We could make a whole podcast about builders' intuition,
Right.
And how I think you and I, over the decades we've been in this business, have sharpened our intuition. Because you don't have very good intuition as a 22-year-old, but I can tell you as a 52-year-old, I can walk up to a house and just spot a few things and go, oh yeah, I have a feeling something's going on here, and
you
this
know,
is what it is.
there's something to be said for hiring a project manager who's 50 years old.
Yeah, there's some intuition there, which is hard.
Another word for intuition is pattern recognition. Right?
Yeah,
so
that's
you've
right.
seen it happen before.
Or wisdom.
I can't tell you how many times we're working on a project and we run into something and my eyes just widely open up and I think to myself, I've seen this movie before.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
And sure enough, I know exactly what to do, only because I've run into that experience so many times.
Yeah.
Whereas a 22-year-old project manager right out of school is going to say, whoa, what do I do here?
Yeah. I have a funny story about that. A couple of years ago, I heard Joe Stiebrick talk one time. That's the guy who founded buildingscience.com. And Joe said he regularly did these building examinations that were like $100,000 for his company come out and examine the building and issue a report. And he said in this presentation I saw, I don't think he'd be embarrassed by this, but he said, you know, if I go out to a building on these $100,000 examinations, usually within 5 minutes I know what the problem is. But if you want the dough, you got to give the show. And so he'd have 5 people with him that would go around clicking all these photos and making a big report. And the last page of this 40-page report that, you know, took 3 weeks to compile would be Joe's summary, which basically he figured out in the first 5 minutes was the problem with the house. But he said, you got to give the show if you want the dough. I love that. I think about that all the time. It's a good little wisdom. Tim, fabulous conversation. I think the level of your project managers, their experience, their wisdom, their qualities here really makes the company. So hopefully we gave you guys some good knowledge, some good wisdom from Tim and I on what makes a good project manager. Use that resource. Feel free to. I have no affiliation with them. You just got to Google them. But PSP, great people over there. With that being said, guys, hit that subscribe button. We've got new podcasts every single Friday during the season. We take about a month off in January, but we're heading strong through the rest of the year. Thanks to our sponsors. We give a 1 minute or so plug to our sponsors, and that allows us to take time away from our job to build a studio and give you this free podcast. So thank you to ViewRail for sponsoring. And if you want to see Tim and I's shiny faces and our cool new logo and podcast studio, if you go to thebuildshow.com, you can actually see the video version of this. And lastly, if you're listening on either Spotify or iTunes, do me a favor, hit that review button or rate button. Give us that 5-star if you think we deserve it, and make a little comment on there about how the Build Show podcast has been helpful for you. That helps us increase our ratings and our rankings and get this podcast out to more builders, because Tim and I do this because we feel like we want to pass our wisdom on to that next generation of builders and remodelers and architects that are listening, and maybe even a few homeowners and general contractors and subcontractors. We don't want there to be any barriers to them learning. And sometimes the barriers, frankly, they don't know that the Build Show exists. So if you want to pass this on to a friend, we would really appreciate that referral. That being said, guys, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show podcast.